Hey, everybody, and welcome to the season finale of this episode of Frank About Health. Now, season finale, but of course, I'll be here. I'll be here again, coming up with greatest hits episodes, or I'll be coming up with a new season of episodes starting around August. That's what I'm estimating. But it's time for a break because I'm first going to reflect with today's special guest, and then I'm going to explain later on in the show why I need a month break because it's all for the benefit of all you listeners and viewers out there. That all being said, today's guest is a former host from talkradio.nyc. If any listener or viewer out there knows of the Rob and Cali show, this is Cali Alpert, a referral from Sam Leibowitz. Again, I'm very grateful to all of his referrals because I learn a lot from those individuals who come on the show, end up either becoming a co-host or a recurring guest. But what I like about you is your background. And because of the fact that I'm going to let you talk about your background, I'll let you do all of the introduction because I think that a lot of listeners and viewers out there will benefit from your experience. Remember, everyone, this is Brain Health Awareness Month. And we do have a brain health awareness story that Callie will share in segment two. But again, the focus of this episode is to show how to use your experience when living with brain health issues within the family or within friends or your community, how it can make or break you. But in Callie's case, it made her. Just like as I've been advocating for epilepsy, it's been keeping me stable and becoming an advocate. But there have been those moments. I'm just continuing to learn as I go on this journey. I will issue a disclaimer. Any information about this episode shared between myself and Callie is food for thought. They're not the views of talkradio.nyc or of Frank About Health, but rather they're insights that hopefully you can benefit from if you can relate. They're not us trying to persuade you to change your primary care physician or to stop taking the medications you currently are taking. They're us just to give you insight, awareness, and advocacy, and ultimately support. That all being said, Callie, welcome back to talkradio.nyc. While welcome to this episode of Frank About Health.
Thank you so much, Frank. It's really fun to be back, even to hear the introductory music really harkened back to many years ago when I had the show. So it's a pleasure to be here, especially for your season finale. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'd like you to tell the audience about your broad background, not just being a former host with talkradio.nyc, but you're an Emmy Award winning producer. So I'd like to know more about what kind of shows or podcasts or media that you were producing.
Thank you for that. That cuts a wide swath of questions and answers that I could offer to you.
Right.
Um, I started when I was a kid, actually, just to kind of go linearly and chronologically. When I was a child, before I knew what I wanted to be and do as an adult, I was an interviewer very intrinsically, and I would practice on my stuffed animals with my hairbrush, asking them what I thought were very deep and existential and prophetic questions. God knows what they really were. And this was also back in the 70s. So I was a huge fan of Barbara Walters and I was studying her interviews again, not consciously knowing, but I guess some bigger force did know
Right.
and led me down that path, that I really loved the engagement of the interviewing process and the art form of it. Now I consider it one of my art forms.
Right.
So I went to college for broadcasting and telecommunications. And I did a lot of radio and television during those years in my 20s. And when I graduated college, really having no clue how to even find a job, this was in the mid 80s, and not really having like the guidance or the resources. I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I looked at an ad in the back of the New York Times and I got an administrative assistant job at a small advertising agency in New York City. But I started coordinating and producing radio commercials. And from there, I kind of faked my way into some really cool TV jobs. Started with, I worked with a lot of rock and roll and celebrity programming earlier in my career,
Mm-hmm.
and was interviewing some of my favorite rock icons and all kinds of different venues and entertainment outlets from E Entertainment TV and Access Hollywood, King Biscuit Flower Hour for those of us who grew up at a certain time and space. Um, And it was a really good way for me to cut my teeth. I was in Los Angeles for a good chunk of this during the 90s. It was a really good way for me to cut my teeth and to really learn beyond the kind of expanding the way I ask questions and learn to listen and engage in conversation, knowing what production was and knowing the difference between how I'm holding an agenda for a professional organization that needed you to meet certain needs with the material you got from a certain interview
Right.
and the ones that I wanted to ask on the side just for my own edification and pleasure.
Yeah.
So it was a really good way, and also just learning how, working with camera people and editors and all the things that go into making television shows. And so that was really the very early. It's an abridged version of the early days of my TV career. And then
Hmm.
after I worked in Los Angeles, I discovered that I was really probably more interested in what I call real people versus, in all due respect to celebrities and famous rock stars, because I did
Right.
have some great thrills and have really great stories to tell and gained a lot of wisdom from them.
Hmm.
I started working more in talk shows and I started doing field work on a variety of different talk shows where I was being sent to dip into people's lives and learn how to elicit and tell their story in very short periods of time.
Right.
And was around all kinds of subcultures and people with all kinds of different challenges and interesting lifestyles. And I could go on and on, but that's sort of the gist of the early springboard for my production and storytelling career.
Amazing. So predominantly, were you always interviewing people in terms of health and wellness, or was it a myriad of topics?
Yeah, it no, it wasn't initially. So in my early 20s, I was always on my personal wellness, more internal, like spiritual path.
Right.
That was something I probably have been on that path since I was 5 or 6 years old, but it wasn't conscious. Now, when I look
Right.
back, given how deep I am into that whole world, both personally and professionally, I can
Hmm.
say in the rearview mirror that there were signs of it very early on. But no, in answer to your question, I wasn't. I was doing more promotion for different projects or films and then when I got into certain talk shows, I was working on talk shows where I was doing a lot of psychologically bent stories.
Yes.
It wasn't until the early days of the Dr. Oz show, I was one of the producers who launched that. I was there for the first 5 years
Mm.
before Dr. Oz got controversial.
To say the
Um,
least.
and it was a
Understandable.
really, really powerful and beautiful experience. And that's when I started lobbying for more of the wellness, psychological, spiritual energy, some of the more alternative, dare I say, woo woo or, kind of far out modalities as well, because I was really interested in my own personal journey of integrating all of my parts
Yes.
because I'd always kind of lived from a place where they were dualistic. And I had my personal life, which was very passionate about all of wellness and spirituality and psychology. And then
Yes.
my professional life. And I struggled with that for many years early on, of them being kind of separable. So that was part of my impetus. Beyond the fact that I had these great platforms to support people that had voices in the wellness community. So it
Yes.
was later in my career that I started to do that.
Incredible. I think in some ways we kind of reflect off of each other because I was in the music industry for 10 years and I had a chance to go to Oscars and Emmy Awards. Believe it or not, I never went to the Grammys, but that's okay. I got mistaken for being at Grammy Award parties, so as a result, I would get VIP benefits at the after parties.
Who did they think you? Did
But
they think you were somebody else? Did they think you were did you have a doppelganger that was a rock star or something that was there already?
No, no. Although I used to do a good mean impersonation of Michael Jackson, and I got away with that in a
Oh.
lot of different venues. But the thing is that in terms of being in that constant environment of the music industry. I would call it actually glamorized pathology because
Mm,
you've not only got
yes.
a lot of individuals that are very successful musicians or artists, let's say, that could probably be coming from a place of narcissism, but a healthy type because everyone's engaging in their content, whether it's their tours, their albums, their interviews on TV, so forth and so on. But then you've also got the internal politics where how do you know this person and why were you invited to that event? And I found myself naturally becoming very strategic in my way of
Hmm.
approaching the people I was working with. Not that I was, isolated or estranged or anything, but I always felt like I was in a negotiation of some sort when I was in a meeting, a marketing strategy meeting, let's say, or an album release party that was being set up. And it was a little bit overwhelming at first. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because I'm not used to that, having been in more traditional industries prior to that, financial services, for example. Now, yet it became the impetus for me to know that the best way to relate to people was by understanding who this person is, what character representations do they show, what possible defenses are they showing or traumas, and somehow get on the same path with them. If it was if it was not possible, then there was no relationship and I moved on. But it allowed me to all of a sudden become more entrepreneurial in my ways of doing business. And then, due to COVID, as well as due to my epilepsy, in addition, due to my father cancer recovery and my cousin's dementia diagnosis, I fell into health and wellness
Mm-hmm.
using like what you described of your own background, using my experiences to try to create a product out of that or an
Yeah.
ecosystem, if you
Yeah.
will. But it
Yeah.
does touch upon all my skill sets, my marketing, my forecasting, my technology, but more importantly, the ability to communicate. That I think is fundamental in both of our cases.
Yeah, that's a big one because that sort of underlies everything, right? Is the ability to communicate. And early in my life, I was not only a big mouth and, a kid who was talking during class all the time, but also an avid oratorical contest participant in my town in New Jersey and winner.
Right.
And so I really grew my chops and my affinity for talking and sharing information. But I love the way you just said that. First of all, just the way you just encapsulated your experience was really great, and I relate to
Thanks.
that. And I do think the other piece that I take away from just what you just described is when you approach anything in your life from sort of a meta perspective. And so you're not just sort of in that role as producer or working in the music industry, but you're also in a place of witnessing and observing and
Yes.
really noticing and using that for your own awareness, personal growth, mental health, whatever it may be. I really relate to that. I think it's so important.
I think that, like for most people, if you're advocating for people or you're advocating for yourself, you don't only want it to be when you have a health crisis.
Exactly.
You want it to be all the time. But you also want to be aware of the threats that are out there. People that are not good for you, whether they're called toxic people or environments or situations that would only derail your focus and your energy. So, for that reason alone, like they always say, it all starts with you, or they say, without health, you can't build wealth. But fundamentally, I think what I'm always trying to bring home on Frank About Health, and thanks to Sam and understanding when I approached him back around the time you were on the network, I only wanted to remove the stigma on epilepsy that I may be deemed different because of a history of seizures, but I may have some secret sauce or some specialties that you might need, which I think, thanks to being on the show after COVID, now 122 episodes later, I think the message is finally getting out there. We're about to take our first break, but now I want to hear more about your personal health and wellness story that has motivated your career that you just mentioned in the first section. It is Brain Health Awareness Month, and from our pre-interview, you have mentioned some related topics that I've talked about this past month. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to hear how that story made you evolve into the producer that you are today, as well as whatever talking points you can share with the audience as to how they can learn from that similar experience and not take it too much to heart, because sometimes when they do, it can lead to different defenses and structures that are just unhealthy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned as we are talking with the interviewer with Cali Alpert right here on talkradio.nyc and on our social media platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitch. We will be back in a few.
Are you a conscious co creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Broncu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. We're here with Cali Alpert, former host of The Rob and Cali Show here on Talking Alternative Broadcasting. You can actually see 100 episodes that are archived on our website, talkradio.nyc. But more importantly, we're going to learn about the other shows that she's done since then. But we're going to segue first into hearing her brain health awareness story that has led to her career direction and her success thus far. So welcome back, Cali, and
Thank you, Frank.
I'm excited to learn more about your experience in dealing with the various brain health awareness issues that I brought up this past month.
Thank you. It's a big one. This is a loaded topic for me. And frankly, it's still so concretized. I'm not that familiar or used to talking about it. So
Sure.
this is a powerful exercise. I'm honored to do it with you. When I was being raised in New Jersey with my sister and my parents, there was a lot of love and a lot of wonderful experiences, and there was also a lot of chaos and a lot of rage. And it really took me, I'm going to skip decades forward. It really took me to, I'm just 60 now. It took me until I was about, I would say my late 40s, early 50s through deep therapeutic process to even know that my mom was on the borderline personality narcissistic spectrum. We never talked about, we still haven't talked about it. There has really, there wasn't any language for this. This wasn't the kind of conversation we were having in our household. And also, when you grow up in a dysfunctional family, as most of us have to some degree or another, there's a certain homeostasis that exists, and you don't know any differently until something really wacky happens, or a friend says, wow, that was really wild to observe that. Or you get older and you are on a very deep spiritual and psychological trajectory, and you learn what healthy is and what non-toxic is.
Right.
So I'm clumping a lot into just a few, short thoughts.
Fine.
There.
Absolutely.
But so that is the way that I was raised and what I was surrounded by. I didn't know about mental illness then. I've since learned a lot. Number one, because of the psychological, emotional trauma that it causes to be raised in that kind of a household. And then the unpacking that's necessary. I've also had a few partners in my life. I lost one. I lost a boyfriend actually to a psychotic break that led to a drug overdose when I was in my 30s, and he was in his 30s as well. And I've since had one other boyfriend who suffered with mental illness, but thankfully is fine. So it's something that once removed has been a very big part of my life for many years. I think, again, often when it's something that's as close as when you're the person that's your primary caregiver or one of your two primary caregivers and you don't know any differently, there's no frame of reference.
Correct.
So, I could sit here now and spout out all kinds of crazy circumstances and things that happened and know that none of them were acceptable, or quote unquote normal, although I hesitate to use that word.
Right.
Um, but I also know that it's what set me on my course to be my own version of a healer, to be a better interviewer, to have a very deep and beautiful spiritual practice, to counsel others in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's really it's character building when you go on a path that a healing journey, like so many of us, especially if you're somebody that's listening to your show, do.
Right.
And it most of the time is caused by some kind of crisis.
Yes.
Um, I also feel like it set me on a path to, I'm a firm believer also that our professional superpowers are often created by whatever deficits we experienced when we were younger. And I'm generalizing. But I do think for me, I'll be more specific. Like for me, I know that I'm a really good question asker and a good listener because that was a huge deficit in my life when I was a kid. And so when you're being raised by somebody who is the one sort of ruling the roost in a household, and your presence and your needs don't really matter as much as theirs do, you don't feel as heard and seen and important.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I'm really good at making other people feel that way because I've spent my whole life compensating for it. Now the pendulum is swung in the middle and it's not as compensatory and all those things. I don't want to bore you with too much of an analysis of me. But that's just kind of the experience of my household when, my mom now is 90. She
Mm.
turned 90 a few weeks ago. And in the last few years, she's been declining. And there is dementia there.
Okay.
That's also not being treated or properly. It's only recently been really diagnosed, other than outside of like myself
Right.
um,
Right.
and my sister just knowing it, and maybe a few other hospital visits she made for other reasons where they got a glimpse into her psychological makeup, but it never really amounted to much
Yeah.
else.
Mm-hmm.
And so dealing with that is really interesting because it creates a need for more patience and more acceptance and more compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And it complicates things because this is somebody that I've spent my whole life trying, or at least my adult life, trying to heal from. And I'm still operating on all these different levels. One is of deep love and compassion for this elderly woman who is ill and declining. The other is deep compassion for myself and the experience that I've had growing up and trying to heal that. And for those to coexist is very powerful
Mm-hmm.
and a great learning experience. But I'll take a pause there.
No, I think it was actually a perfect end of sentence period, because I'll tell you, when I listened to your story, and I know you were just providing a schematic,
Mm-hmm.
basically. I mean, you did mention dementia was in there. I think earlier you mentioned something about your father having Parkinson's,
Yes.
which is in itself another neurological condition.
Mm-hmm.
But yet the aspect of living with it, whether it's the patient living with it or the people, the family extensions, caregivers, whatever, it has its own psychological side effect, if that's the right word to use here. And if you are trying to recover from that through your upbringing, but at the same time engaging with them to help out where you can, the constant juggling act has to be bridged by some anchor that for me has been this show, Frank About Health. That 3-year journey that I've taken thus far with Frank About Health has allowed me to deal with my cousin's dementia, my father's cancer recovery, my own epilepsy issues that have, for some reason, even throughout COVID, I didn't even have one seizure. So who knows? Maybe I was just so
Ah,
conscious of everything that I did all that I could to just do all the precautions, all the necessary consultations with medical professionals. And by virtue of doing the show, I would be doing additional research. And before you knew it, I can't say I became a doctor. I'm not licensed or anything, but I would take on an opportunity to go to med school if given the opportunity.
mm,
I don't think I would eagerly seek it out like I've seeked out my previous education. The issue remains, though, that fundamentally I've always been concerned through my knowledge of psychology, and which I would say was my defense structure from having lived in a dysfunctional environment or having dysfunctional situations hurled at me, But that psychology is allowing me to be my own best friend, use my thinking, hone my intuition, and allow myself to observe the situation and determine if it's worth engaging in or not, and try to keep it. So
Yeah.
that all being said, what you just talked about shows that one way that anyone who's watching this show right now can teeter between both sides of freeing yourself from the dysfunction, but also engaging when you need to, is have a platform. It doesn't have to be a show.
Mm,
It's great if you have one, but just what do you stand for? What pros and cons are you weighing against? And act according to where the best benefit is for everyone involved.
yeah, I love that. I am a former therapist, very, very important person, formative chapter of my life, the work that I did with him, and my therapy work. Used to call it my like base camp, like fortifying your base camp. The play, and then he comes from a very deep spiritual psychotherapy
Yes.
perspective.
Yes.
But it's sort of the same thing you're thinking, like you or saying you have to have whatever your fundamental root is to create more spaciousness and equanimity around the things that have caused you the most pain so that you can function and find some neutrality and some space and then the energy and the fortitude to help others like you've been doing so much with the show.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I really do believe that often our superpowers and the things that are of the most benefit to the planet were born of a lot of pain and suffering often. I really do.
Exactly. So it's funny. I've heard stories, whether I've heard them on TV or whether I've heard them even through other friends and family, that sometimes there are those warriors out there that say,
Mhm.
give me more pain. I'm going to become stronger for it. I don't think I have the stomach for that kind of mindset. I try to resist as much pain as I can handle, especially because I worry that it could cause a seizure in my case. But lately, especially when I've had stories on this show that are traumatic, that in the past, I probably would have been like, I really can't handle that. I just look at it as, okay, this is food that I'm going to learn something
Mm,
from. And I guess also there is another thing, and we're about to take our second break. There is another thing I noticed, like when I'm doing this show, I'm so busy monitoring our conversation, what's going on behind the scenes, the timing of our next break, that it feels almost out of body. So it doesn't allow me to fully engage until after I've seen it back.
Or you could be that present. Maybe you're so present in the experience that you're not in here, not in your mind.
That's
Either
true.
way, I understand. Because I know that experience really well. So I appreciate that.
Oh, you're so welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we get back, we're now going to meet Cali Alpert, the interviewer. But more importantly, what we've already talked about in the last 27 minutes or so is that just like myself and other guests I've had on this show, we have all dealt with, whether it's neurological, mental health, or physical issues that have led us on different paths. And what we're saying here is being your own advocate can make that path more constructive if you remember to think first before you respond or act or say the wrong thing, so forth and so on. And Callie has definitely done that. So we're going to learn how she's doing that even more for others in the next segment, right here on this episode of Frank About Health on talkradio.nyc and on all of our socials. So see you in a few.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So basically, here we have Cali Alpert, three-time Emmy Award-winning producer, former host here at talkradio.nyc, and has worked at various media companies, whether it's in a production role or an executive role, or even another podcasting role. But want to hear about a new role that actually encompasses all of what she just spoke about in the last half hour, having lived through watching mental illness at work, in an environment that could have taken her down, but did not. She was able to hone her inner talents of interviewing and communicating and hosting and advocating for many people, including herself. But there's something you have on another website, theinnerviewer.net, that I'd like to learn more, and the listeners and viewers would like to learn more about, because I'm not sure, is it a podcast, or is it a practice, or is it both? Or maybe it's something else.
First of all, thank you. I would like to hire you as my agent if you're available for a side hustle. That's number one. I'm very touched by what you just said. Thank you for encapsulating. It's interesting when people encapsulate your life for you. So I'm moved by that. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
So yes, I have recently. I actually just to back into where we left off in terms of the professional ride that I've been on. I started advocating and lobbying more for wellness practitioners and healers to be a part of mainstream TV when I was working in mainstream television, because I feel like, there's, at least at the time, not enough people using media and its wide reach and its huge platform in ways that were as idealistic as I am.
Right.
And there's thankfully been some exceptions to that, but I was hoping to be on that same mission. And so that's how I really started to become more familiar with a lot of the people that were in the wellness community, separately from me reading their books, listening to their radio shows, podcasts later, eventually. And a lot of them became my teachers, adjunct, at a distance, spiritual and psychological and mental wellness teachers.
Yes.
And so I'd always wanted to gravitate more toward that industry. And for the last 4 years, I had, up until very recently, been working at Omega Institute, a holistic retreat center, iconic retreat center in the upstate New York, or 2 hours north, in the Hudson Valley, I should say, north of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Real upstate New Yorkers wouldn't like that, so we'll separate it out. And then recently got downsized, laid off out of that position. And so I have started my own company called The Innerviewer, and it's INNER viewer, theinnerviewer.net. And it's a play on my experience as an interviewer. I'd also hosted the podcast for Omega Institute, which is still living and breathing on their YouTube playlist channel, dropping in.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that experience of continuing to further, and I'd had another radio show on another platform, Unity platform. Hope it's okay to mention that, because I'm
Sure. Absolutely.
very, because I love Sam and I love this network. So I just really started to further my career and my passion for spending time in that world and interviewing those types of luminaries and hearing those types of voices and giving them a voice. And then the more I got into it, the more people were telling me that they could see when they were listening or watching some of these long form interviews that I was doing, that the person I was asking questions of was having a healing experience. And that by a certain question that I was asking them, or a series of questions that I was posing to them, that they could see, the listener or the viewer could see my subjects sort of waking up to new concepts, even though they were in the position of being the expert and the teacher. And that
Right.
was not my conscious intention. It's just what happens when you have dynamics or when you bring certain things to your career, right? Or to your love or your art form.
Yes.
And so, what I've done recently is, like I said, the interviewer is just is the name of the container, and it's a three-pronged business that I started. The first is private practice, where I do private one-on-one life guidance sessions with people. You could call it life coaching. I tend to veer away from that word just because I don't resonate with it. No disrespect to the life coaching
Right.
industry. Um, and because it's also focused more on my specific brand of question asking and the culmination of the years that I've interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of people from all walks of life, famous, not famous, everyday heroes, everything in between. And
Right.
that wisdom that I could share, coupled with my own healing journey, which I've been on in a very deep and gutted out way, gut wrenching way.
Yeah.
Now I'm not in that place, thankfully, because I've had great support and I worked really hard. And I
Mm.
have a pretty decent understanding of ancient wisdom traditions. And then I've worked in the wellness industry now for 15 years, given the TV wellness shows that I've done and the holistic retreat centers that I've worked with. So
Yes.
that combined, that sort of three-pronged tentacles is the culmination of what comprises the interviewer. I also do legacy interviews for people that are interested in having a deeper version of their own story to leave behind for posterity for their family members, asking the types of questions that I ask that might not typically be what you'd find if you got those done somewhere else.
Right.
Um, and then also I help people with storytelling with their own brands or their own websites because so many people are so busy launching their businesses and are amazing practitioners and healers, but might not have the right facilitator to tell their personal story, which I think is what people resonate with so much these days when they
Yes.
choose a business, a service, a practitioner, is that they want to know who they are as a human. So that all fits under the umbrella of what I'm offering.
Wow. So then I gather a podcast would be an extension of that, but it's really a one-on-one session, as you called it. That is it videotaped or is it just one-on-one in private?
No, these are private. I'm doing them online now. I could do them in person for people where it's where logistically we're in the where
In the
it's
same vicinity.
feasible.
Yeah.
But so far they've all been online. They're private Zoom sessions. I don't have an active podcast right now. I am looking for new opportunities and have a few feelers out for some ideas that I'm pitching around. And I'm available, for hosting and helping other people with theirs. So no, I don't have a podcast right now, but I look forward to it. And you're reminding me of how much fun it is to talk with a microphone and just connect and
Yes.
and just really share more about these topics and these subjects that we hold so dear.
I think what I noticed throughout our conversation is the common thread that definitely whatever our experience was, whether it was traumatic or professional, it just is a natural segue to what you're doing next. And I'm thinking, I know that in your case, you were talking about being exposed to such traumatic issues that it just made you really look deep dive into various people that you would be interviewing, whether it was in your various jobs or whether it's now what you're doing in private. But I think one aspect that made this so comfortable for me, other than the fact that I have been involved in the music and entertainment industry and have been able to speak in front of thousands of people when hosting events with artists and release parties for albums or tours or whatever was going on, is that there was also my personal desire to be in the recording studio. And ironically, this is
Mm-hmm.
the only time that I actually have a mic that resembles it, but I am not a great singer. So that being
I was going to
said,
ask you.
yeah, I mean, I've done talent shows and I've either impersonated people that sang a certain way, aka Michael Jackson, but you won't find me actually recording an album anytime soon. I'll do karaoke, but that's as far as it is. But from the perspective of just being on the microphone and knowing that you're really reaching many ears, not just 5 people or 10 people, although in the beginning that probably was just the size of it. But now from the metrics I've seen, I have an interesting audience, but I'm only hoping that with my relationship with Hilton that it'll get even by default bigger. Because what I do want to do with Frank About Health, as well as any other platforms that I'm engaging in right now, is I want to reach out and create health and wellness for crises that we've all undergone. One motivation for me has been the recent fires in Maui
Mm-hmm.
last August.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there are, the ongoing threats of resurgence of COVID that I keep hearing about. But I think it is so contained at this point that is no longer an impetus like it was 3 years ago for me. Then you hear about other kinds of issues that you just want to, have that voice and say your piece about it, even if you can't create the direct change, but hopefully you reach someone that has the power to make the change occur. So that's where I've noticed 122 episodes have taken me. So
Mm.
who knows? Maybe I will take you up on being one of your potential clients or something with the interviewer.
May I
Um,
ask you an interviewer-esque question?
sure.
Is if you had to tell me and your listeners and viewers right now, of all of your many hats that you wear and the future pursuits I know we're going to hear about momentarily as well, is there any one particular thing that's top of mind today of all of your passions and missions that you care about the most today?
Wow. Yes. Well, I mean, I could say this out loud because it's public information. Back in 2001, prior to 9/11, I was given the pleasure of having Cyndi Lauper come to Fordham University and make a presentation on the music industry. I was the host. It was my media club that I created at that school. And she came out of the willingness of a lot of people that I worked with at Columbia House and Sony Music. And not to mention because she is an individual that is a kind-hearted soul. You wouldn't know it unless you got a chance to meet her, because we do live in a media platform that likes to alter perceptions that accommodate the sales of the product.
Just a little.
Yeah, just a little. But either way, that being said, she's now going on her farewell tour. So what's on my priority list, even though it could go my way or it may not, is I would love to have her come on Frank About Health and advocate for what she does. A lot of advocacy work for social
Mhm.
causes in the health and wellness space
Yeah.
and for the environment and other stuff. The irony is that I was texting her on Facebook. She's an avid Facebook user, and I was reminding her of that time 21 years ago. She responded to me and said, "Yeah, I remember you." I mean, I can hear her voice. She didn't actually say that to me, but just the fact that she seems accessible. My wish or my priority, to answer your question, is to somehow, well, I will attend one of her dates on her tour. I have to, but I would love to meet with her and have her come on the show.
So be it. So you just put it out there.
Put it out there and hope the universe provides. Exactly.
Thanks for indulging me in that.
Oh, no problem. I do think we have 1 minute to our next break. So who knows? Maybe this is the segue to talk about the future, which is what we're going to do right here on Frank About Health in the final segment. So everyone, please stay tuned right here on talkradio.nyc and on our socials. And if you have any questions out there on YouTube or LinkedIn, just ask away, and either myself or Cali or both of us will answer. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you in a few.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Broncu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So, Callie, to be frank with you, I want to start this segment by talking about your future. What would you say, with everything you've been through and what you're doing now with the interviewer, are going to be your plans for, let's say, the next 3 to 6 months by the end of 2025?
Wow. I'm way better at asking those questions than I am answering them. I would like to, I'm in the process of focusing on building my business. That's really my primary focus. And also personally, which to me is not separate from my professional life anymore, is to be the embodiment of that to the best of my ability. So, to have all my parts more married, to make sure that I'm in a place of alignment and receptivity, and cutting ties with some of my old habits of over efforting and over trying, and just trusting that by being very in touch with this mission and this desire, that I'm both in a place of wanting to serve others and also to serve myself, and circularly. So it's really it's about building my business, but that's the sort of spiritual and psychological bent as well, is to make sure that I'm embodying all those things at the same time. So thank you for asking that. Yeah.
Oh, you're so welcome. I mean, if anything, when we are in the health and wellness space, or if we're doing podcasts, or if we're doing all the myriad of things that you've done, there's a constant, talk about interviewing. You have to view yourself from within first.
You do. It's true.
And then bridge that out or transfer it out to all the people that you are dealing with. I mean, everybody calls it networking, but when you are networking, it's not just we're all at a party networking with each other. There's one aspect to it. But when you start cementing the key contacts or relationships, you're building your professional family that in some cases can become your personal friends or family. I mean, I know that's what college is for, and that's what high school is for. But in the professional world, you have to make your own family, especially because you want people to see you as you're representing yourself, not just your products or services. They have no value if the person representing them is not being authentic, So it has to start from within, and then you make sure that whatever you're designing or creating or mapping out as far as milestones or targets are concerned are a reflection of your long-term mission or view or vision. I say the view. I was thinking of the show The View, But the thing is that I can relate to that. I know that I've been mentioning on Frank About Health that I've been working on a project for the last 6 months that is hopefully going to come to fruition throughout the summer, which is actually a documentary synopsizing or summarizing the last 3 years of Frank About Health and where it's going to go next and in the future. So to have you on the season finale talking about that very thing that you just answered, it's definitely, we're on the same page here in terms of what my next plans are for the next 6 months. I know that I definitely will take a 1-month hiatus to start setting up everything. I'll come back to Frank About Health the first Thursday in August, which I believe is August 1st. And then I will just continue to do the release of that documentary, in addition to expanding a new platform that is going to work in conjunction with talkradio.nyc to add, added value to existing programming that's on the network, in addition to creating more original programming that probably is more suitable for my platform, that ultimately, when it's packaged on a new website that I'm calling healthemedia.com for now, it could change based on.
I love that. So good.
I like it because of the play on healthy,
I do
healthy
too.
media and e-media. It's
Mm-hmm.
electronic media. It's
Mm-hmm.
podcasts. It's downloads. It's blogs even. So the thing is that it's a bridge, like I was saying throughout the show. The one destination point is Hilton, like I said. Another destination point could be NYU Langone Health Systems, which has been a big advocate for me and my family well, I would have to say really the last 30 years, but more importantly, the last 5 years especially. Um, then there's also just trying to get to the bigger audience out there that really needs to learn to self-advocate. We do live in crazy times right now. We are, after all, in an election year, and just hoping that whatever the results are in November don't make all of these plans that I'm sharing, that you've been sharing, all of a sudden take a detour. I really hope not. I think what was very interesting about COVID is that it allowed us all to become by default a community and
Mm-hmm.
allow you to reflect. And that's why I reached out to Sam and said, "Hey, I'd like to come back," because I just felt it would just definitely keep me not only busy, but informed, and also help to advocate from within and externally to the world out there, or to the viewership that I've built since then. So I think both you and I are on a pivot direction starting in second half of this year.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. May I ask you a question about your hiatus?
Sure.
Just how are you going to use that time?
Oh, you mean in terms of programming the shows,
Yeah,
or
or what do you hope to get out of, because you're going to take a pivot and take this month, right? To take a down month, but it's not a down month. I know you're going to be working pretty hard. What do you hope
yes?
comes from that month?
Well, the irony of July 4th being a Thursday and being Independence Day, there's not going to be a show no matter what. So I think the other three shows, the 11th, 18th, and 25th, I've already chosen in the back of my mind. I just have to let the network know for sure. My top three episodes since January that have had the most views, I already know which ones they are. I just have to get them all set up and then come back August 1st from the Hilton Chicago, where me and my monthly co host, Karen Ross, will talk about whatever that healthcare awareness month is, either with a guest or without. Most likely it's with a guest who has a book or a podcast or something to discuss that is related to the type of month that we are looking at in August. And then I have some ideas of bringing back some guests that have been on the show last year. Um, and this documentary that I'd like to see completed, I'd like to put it on talkradio.nyc if it makes sense, because it's a much bigger story than a 1 hour show. But yet, there's the marketing side of it. We are featuring people from talkradio.nyc in it. So it would be a way to promote the various shows that are on the network and drive traffic to the network. There's that aspect to it. But ultimately, it's a show about advocacy and creating awareness of how to maintain your mental health. And it's also and where everybody that I'm working with has helped me become to where not only I'm going, but where they've been going. So I'm just hoping that ultimately the story is sold to Hilton in particular because of the advocacy work and the philanthropy work that we've discussed, potentially doing in the future. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
forgotten about the Maui fires. That's a 5 year rebuild, so if I'm going into year two, I'm right at the beginning in terms of helping out if I can. Again, I'm being mindful of the realities and the restrictions and the limitations. And just not to mention, like I said, I am concerned about the political outcome that we have in November. I would hate to experience restrictions in that vision, but,
Mm.
all you can do is take one day at a time and see what happens.
There's so much I could say. So much I could say about that what you just left off with, but I won't do that right now. I won't make this a
No,
political
actually, I think
thing,
we
but
still have a good 2 or 3 minutes. I'd like maybe 2 or 3 bullet points that you'd like to highlight.
yeah, well, first of all, I'm just excited for you and knowing what it's like to make documentaries, and also you're doing it independently, and about your story and the story of the network is very brave, because it shines a light. It's more of a mirror when it's not so it's easier and harder when something's so removed and it's a topic that's not as personal.
Right.
So I commend you for taking that on, because that's always it's not easy. It can be a really deeply gratifying experience, but not an easy one.
Well, that's true. I think if anything, like we've talked about during the past hour, a lot of it is the equivalent of being with a family. Um, Sam knows me back since 2016, and we met through a mutual friend, and it was going to be called Frank About Epilepsy, but now that's so irrelevant compared to everything else that has come up since COVID. So, but the fact that I came back, what I think that was 5 years later or something when I came back, and this whole new platform, the Zoom platform, and I was able at the same time to balance out what was going on with my father and cousin and so forth. It just became part of my personal mission
Hmm.
versus back then when I was actually just trying to talk about epilepsy. That is what you were just saying, that when it's far removed, because I'm talking to a small segmented audience, versus now everyone about the various issues, when the hidden message is not the healthcare issue, which we talk about during the show, it's self-ownership, self-advocacy, using what God gave you to be mindful of what resources are out there and what to think in case you haven't thought it. You know,
Right.
uh, I can't say I've changed a large segment of the population, but I have seen a lot of progress in the past year in particular. And I'm hoping when the documentary gets out there, it'll make the message louder and stronger. And not only will people follow me more, but they'll follow all the other people that are featured in it, including Sam as well. And so who knows, maybe potentially, and I'm being frank about this right now, live on air, maybe we can collaborate on this on some level.
It would be my pleasure to learn more about what that might look like for sure. Thank you for even holding me in the running for your thoughts.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As I said, two people have become co-hosts after appearing on Frank About Health. And as I mentioned, they've become like friends to me, colleagues
Mm.
and friends, and definitely fellow advocates. And I view the whole network and the whole experience as having built a family, not just a platform.
And
And
that's what we all need, especially now, is a sense of community. It doesn't matter if it's blood or chosen family, it's family. I'm going to wrap this up for Frank because I think he might be having some technical difficulties. So I'm going to thank everybody for participating. Big congratulations and love to Frank for wrapping up this season, and much appreciation for including me on the show. Thank you all for watching and for listening. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Logan, for making sure that we keep everything moving here from behind the scenes too. Take care, everybody.